illusion of democracy is very much kept alive. We are being ruled by leaders who claim that they are democratic leaders, and they force us to play along with their games. In fact, many people do so happily.
What happens when a politician breaks the unwritten rule of European politics and calls out the most powerful woman in Brussels to her face? When the cameras are rolling, the room is packed, and there's nowhere to hide? This wasn't a polite disagreement. This wasn't diplomatic theater. This was a full frontal assault on the legitimacy of the entire European Union, delivered with surgical precision by someone who had nothing left to lose. And the moment it happened, the shockwaves didn't just ripple through Brussels. They exploded across a continent that's been quietly suffocating under policies they never asked for, leaders they never elected, and a system that punishes dissent faster than it delivers results. What you're about to witness isn't just a confrontation, it's a detonation, and the fallout is still unfolding. The room was tense before a single word was spoken. You could feel it. The kind of tension that comes when everyone knows something massive is about to detonate and no one can stop it. On one side stood Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, the woman who governs 450 million people across 27 nations without ever appearing on a single ballot. On the other side, a Dutch politician who walked into that chamber with one mission: rip the mask off. No pleasantries, no diplomatic cushioning, just raw, unfiltered truth aimed directly at the throat of the EU's most protected figure. And the second she opened her mouth, the entire illusion of Brussels democracy began to crack wide open. She didn't ease into it. She didn't build up slowly. She went straight for the kill shot. The one accusation Brussels has spent decades trying to bury under layers of procedure, protocol, and carefully worded press releases. No one voted for Ursula von der Leyen. Not a single European citizen walked into a voting booth and chose her. Yet she holds more power over their daily lives than most elected presidents. She controls budgets worth hundreds of billions. She pushes laws that reach into every corner of the continent. She signs deals that reshape entire economies, and she does it all from a position the public never granted her. That's not democracy. That's something else entirely. And the moment that reality was spoken out loud, with cameras rolling and the world watching, the room shifted. Because once you name the lie everyone's been living with, you can't unname it. This is the nerve she struck. The legitimacy crisis Brussels prays no one talks about in public. The EU loves to drape itself in democratic language. Elections, representation, the will of the people, but dig one layer deeper and the machinery looks completely different. Ursula wasn't chosen by voters. She was selected by backroom negotiations between national leaders most people couldn't name, then rubber-stamped by a parliament that had no real alternative. It's democracy in name only. A carefully stage-managed process designed to look legitimate while keeping real power far away from public hands. And for years, that system worked because no one with a microphone dared to call it what it is. Until now, the politician didn't just question Ursula's authority, she dismantled the entire structure that props her up. Because this isn't about one person, it's about a system built to insulate elites from accountability. A system where the people paying the price, farmers losing their land, families crushed by inflation, communities overwhelmed by migration, have zero say in who makes the decisions. They're told it's all legal, all procedural, all perfectly democratic. But when the person running the show was never on the ballot, when the policies destroying livelihoods were never debated in a campaign, when the consequences land on people who were never given a choice, then the word democracy becomes a marketing slogan, nothing more. And she said it out loud, in front of everyone. That's why this moment detonated. Then she twisted the knife, because calling out the selection process was just the opening move. The real damage came when she connected that illegitimate authority to the policies tearing Europe apart. The Green Deal that's bankrupting farmers and small businesses. The migration pact flooding towns with people local communities can't absorb. The €800 billion rearmament plan funneling taxpayer money into weapons while families can't afford heating. These aren't abstract policies debated in think tanks. These are decisions with consequences. Real ones, felt every single day by millions of people who never consented to the person making them. And that's the trap Brussels can't escape. You can defend the process all you want. You can cite treaties and regulations and institutional frameworks. But when people are suffering under policies they didn't vote for, implemented by a leader they didn't choose, the system stops looking legitimate. It starts looking like something darker, tyranny. Not because it uses gulags or secret police, but because it's perfected something more insidious. Control through language, control through bureaucracy, control through polished speeches that hide the pressure underneath. Old tyrannies were obvious. Tanks in the streets, midnight arrests, fear you could see and name. But this system operates differently. It uses respectability, it uses moral language. It wraps every restriction in noble slogans and presents every crackdown as necessary for the greater good. Disagree with migration policy? You're xenophobic. Question climate regulations? You're a denier. Push back on surveillance? You're endangering public safety. The labels land faster than the arguments, and once you're labeled, you're done. Not arrested, just silence, sidelined, buried under bureaucratic pressure that's harder to fight because it never looks like force. That's the brilliance of the accusation. She didn't compare the EU to Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia. She compared it to Orwell, to a system that controls people by controlling reality itself, by rewriting the meaning of words until up is down and war is peace. And Brussels handed her the evidence on a silver platter. They call censorship protecting democracy. They call economic destruction sustainability. They call mass migration solidarity. They call citizens asking questions extremists. Every crisis comes with a new slogan. Every failure comes wrapped in language designed to make disagreement feel immoral. And people are watching it happen in real time. They see the gap between what Brussels says and what they're actually living. Rising prices, rising crime, rising desperation, all while the press releases talk about progress and unity and shared values. The disconnect is so massive, it's impossible to ignore anymore. Then she made it personal, stopped talking about institutions and bureaucracies and aimed everything directly at one face. Ursula von der Leyen, the embodiment of a system millions of Europeans feel they can't escape. And that's when the confrontation became something more dangerous. Because abstract criticism is easy to dismiss. But once you attach a name, a face, a single human being to every policy failure, every broken promise, every decision that crushed someone's livelihood, the accountability becomes unavoidable. Suddenly, it's not the EU making bad choices. It's Ursula. It's not Brussels pushing destructive policies. It's her. And in one move, she turned the entire bureaucratic shield into nothing. No more hiding behind process, no more blaming member states or parliament or treaty obligations. The buck stops with Ursula. And now everyone knows it. But here's where it gets even more explosive. Because the politician didn't just attack Ursula's policies. She went after the one scandal Brussels has been desperately trying to bury. The missing Pfizer texts. A €35 billion vaccine deal negotiated through private messages between Ursula and the CEO, apparently unavailable the moment journalists and investigators came asking. The EU demands total transparency from its citizens, wants to scan their private chats for safety, wants to monitor their transactions for security. But when the Commission president negotiates the biggest pharmaceutical contract in European history through personal texts, suddenly the records disappear. And no one in Brussels can explain why. That's not a bureaucratic oversight. That's selective accountability. Rules for the public. Exemptions for the elite. And she dragged it into the light where everyone could see it. The audience didn't just hear criticism. They heard something that sounded uncomfortably close to corruption. Because if the texts were clean, they'd be released. If the deal was above board, there'd be no reason to hide. But instead, Ursula's team claimed the messages were lost, deleted, irretrievable. The same EU that tracks every digital footprint of its citizens somehow can't locate the text of its own president. The same Brussels that wants backdoor access to encrypted apps for public safety somehow lost the very communications that could prove or disprove wrongdoing in a multi-billion euro deal. The hypocrisy isn't just obvious, it's insulting. And by saying it out loud, in that room, with Ursula sitting right there, the politician did something Brussels can't tolerate. She made the contradiction impossible to ignore. And then came the human cost. Not statistics, not policy debates, real suffering tied directly to Ursula's decisions. Families destroyed by vaccine injuries that were never properly investigated. Communities torn apart by migration policies that dumped consequences on people who never asked for them. Farmers driven to bankruptcy by regulations written by people who've never worked the land. Small businesses crushed by green mandates they can't afford to meet. These aren't talking points. These are lives. And by putting them in front of Ursula, by forcing her to sit there and listen while someone listed the damage, the confrontation stopped being political theater. It became an indictment, a direct accusation that the woman running Europe has blood on her hands, and she can't vote her way out of it because the public never voted her in. So here's what Brussels is terrified of. This moment going viral, this confrontation spreading across every platform, every comment section, every kitchen table conversation in Europe. Because once people see their anger reflected back at them, once they hear someone with a microphone saying what they've been thinking in private, the floodgates open. The consent manufactured over decades starts to crumble, and the question that keeps EU officials awake at night gets louder. What happens when millions of people stop pretending the system is legitimate? The confrontation didn't end with accusations. It escalated into something far more dangerous for Brussels. Because once the legitimacy question was thrown into the open, once Ursula's authority was stripped down to its raw, unelected reality, the politician pivoted to the part that makes this entire system unsustainable. The policies themselves, not the abstract debate about democratic procedure, the actual, tangible destruction being implemented in Ursula's name across